to the Trump administration, which expects that Russia will meddle in U.S. elections later this year. This assessment is part of a report compiled by the U.S. intelligence chief. The report says that Russia is one of the countries that poses the greatest cyber threats to the United States.
Some of these actors, including Russia, are likely to pursue even more aggressive cyber attacks with the intent of degrading our democratic values and weakening our alliances. Persistent and disruptive cyber operations will continue against the United States and our European allies, using elections as opportunities to undermine democracy, sow discord, and undermine our values.
The report goes on to say that Russia could conduct border and more disruptive cyber operations in Ukraine, as well as the upcoming midterm elections in the United States. So that's the statement coming out of the Trump administration. It sounded a warning bell once again on the possibility of cyber attacks by Russia. Remember, there is an ongoing investigation into the level of involvement, or the involvement, in fact, of Russia in the United States presidential elections of 2016, a charge that the Trump administration has vehemently denied. However, that investigation continues. It's a matter of great stress for the U.S. President Donald Trump. But a member of his own administration says that Russia is likely to continue to meddle in the U.S. elections this year. The assessment is part of a report that was compiled by the U.S. intelligence chief. And in it, the report says that Russia is one of the countries that poses the greatest possible cyber threats to the United States. This report says that Russia could conduct bolder and more disruptive cyber operations in Ukraine, as well as the upcoming midterm elections in the U.S. Joining me live on the broadcast right now is WION's correspondent Julia Lyubova. She's joining us from Moscow. Julia, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. Is the statement that's come out likely to spark a fresh standoff between Washington and Moscow?
Well, indeed. So the U.S. Director of National Intelligence has said that Russia, as well as other countries, are likely to carry out more cyber attacks on the U.S. and the European elections. There hasn't been any reaction from Moscow yet to that statement, but Russia has in the past denied it meddled in any foreign elections, particularly in the U.S. elections. So if Moscow does react to this, that it's likely to deny any involvement. And as it has previously called similar statements to this, it's likely to call this statement from the U.S. Director of National Intelligence something similar to anti-Russian hysteria. Russia will be holding its own presidential elections in March later this year, and it has accused the United States and the West of interfering in that election itself. So if any reaction does come from Moscow, Moscow is likely to deny it.
Absolutely, and that really has been the trend as far as Moscow goes, and of course we've seen a counter allegation come in as far as the Russian elections go. But if I can also ask you, Julia, is it interesting in your opinion that the other countries mentioned in this report by the chief of the U.S. intelligence mentions countries that Russia enjoys good relations with, for instance China and Iran?
Well, indeed, yes. So this report has mentioned Russia as well as China and Iran, as you've mentioned. So it said that Russia, as well as other countries, are likely to carry out more cyber attacks on the United States and European elections, seeing these countries as a kind of adversaries that could possibly carry out such cyber attacks. So again, there hasn't been any reaction from Moscow to this, but if it does come, Moscow is likely to deny any involvement.
Fair enough. Stay with me a second longer, Julia. Let me just take our viewers through very quickly the story that we're tracking right now. And Julia giving us an update on the fact that the Trump administration has said that it expects that Russia will meddle in the U.S. elections this year. This assessment is part of a report compiled by the U.S. intelligence chief, which says that Russia is one of the countries that poses the greatest cyber threats to the United States. So the charge coming against Russia once again from the US. Julia, in the past, as you mentioned, Russia has vehemently denied any sort of meddling in the US presidential elections. What sort of commentary, though, that has it generated amongst common people? Do they view these charges against Russia as laughable, or do they take them seriously?
Well, indeed, Russia has vehemently denied any involvement in the US presidential elections and said Russia has called any statements accusing Russia of interference as anti-Russian hysteria. So it's only likely Russia has always denied this, and it's only likely that Russia will continue to deny any involvement despite any evidence that might be, despite any statements that we might be hearing from US officials. So Moscow has denied it in the past and is likely to stick with that and deny it in the future.
Julia Lebova, thank you very much for joining us this evening from Moscow with that update. We'll, of course, keep track of any other statements that come out of Moscow and Washington as far as that report goes.